We're recording now, so any private conversations you have will be on.
Talk about Jamie Raskin.
It doesn't matter. Just let you know.
Oh my God, they got free. They're constantly changing.
Okay, seeing that it's 6 o'clock, I'm gonna call this meeting of the Enfield Select Board to order. A few housekeeping items. We have a lot of folks in the audience, which is great. Thank you so much for coming this evening. I want to do some reminders. We don't want to assume that your name is going to end up properly in the minutes. So each time you speak, I want you to say your first and last name clearly for our minute takers benefit. Okay. I want to have no over talk and no side talk because, well, it may seem like you feel really quiet. This room is not really made for that kind of acoustics. So it makes it hard for the recording and hard for minute taker and hard for your neighbors. So let's try to limit that and give people their turn. I'm also going to ask you to kind of limit your comments and questions to 3 minutes and not repeat other people so that we can move this along. It is a business meeting. And I want to make sure we have time to include everyone to the best of our ability. So having dispensed with that, we're going to look at the approval of the minutes of December 18th. We have regular and non-public sessions in our packet. I would entertain a motion on one or both. What's the board's pleasure?
I move that we approve both sets of minutes as presented. I'll second that.
Is there any discussion on the minutes? Questions or comments? Seeing none. And we're going to ask the folks online to stay muted, please. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. On to board reports. Eric, you're up first.
All right, planning board had a meeting where we kicked off the new zoning rewrite with the new contractors for that. So it was largely a sort of a discussion around where we are today, how we got here, and bringing in the new contractor up to speed so that they can hit the ground running as fast as possible to meet our July deadline for having a draft of the new zone requirements.
Thank you. Alice?
The Heritage Commission has not met since the holidays, but there was a very nice write-up of Meredith Smith's contributions for the Heritage Commission and the town of Enfield in the January town newsletter. So thank you to Madeline Johnson for that. And Eva, I think they deserve congratulations for all their work on the hometown holidays. I hope that everyone saw how visible it was, and everyone who was involved with that. And they're reconvening this month to look ahead to spring activities.
Thank you. John?
The budget committee continued its budget review process by looking at and talking with the librarians, the library budget, the recreation budget. We looked at the national organization requests and approved those that had made a request, and we were startled that 3 or 4 organizations did not bother to submit a request in a timely fashion or at all. Continued our review of compensation, and things are moving along very well, I think.
Hey, Tracy?
The Energy Committee did not meet in December, but I will note that anyone who read the listserv has read the announcement for the reduction in rates for community power. Very significant decrease in rates as a result of the hard work of the founders of that committee.
Conservation met on Thursday, January 4th. I was not able to attend since I was up north at an NTIA meeting with Ed, which he will tell you about separately. They did reorganize and look forward to working with them in the upcoming year. Does anyone have questions or comments on board reports? Okay, let's go on to town manager's report.
Okay. Thank you.
The staff report, we have a little bit of good news moving forward. We're in the final phases with a police officer applicant. We're hopeful that the last couple tests will be passed, and we should hopefully be making a job offer within the end of this month. So we'll be filling one of those positions as long as everything goes well. And we did have a few other applicants this month that did the physical fitness test, and will be moving forward in the process as well. So we're continuing to look at different applicants. The bonus program we put out there really helped bring in some applications and some quality applications. So we'll continue working through those. We also have a good candidate for the police assistant position. That's been vacant for a little while, and we're hoping again to receive or give a job offer in the near future for that position. DPW has made an offer that's been accepted for our janitor building maintenance specialist position, and we're excited to bring on a new person on board to help us clean and maintain our buildings and facilities. This person has a pretty good background in maintenance and carpentry and those types of things. And so we're excited to bring them on and get them started. The DPW did make the decision to stop taking applications for the seasonal plow driver. We're getting a little bit late in the season, even though we had our first snow. By the time we brought someone on, trained them and did all that, we'd be near the end of the season. So they've decided to pull that job offer, and we'll keep working through the season with what we have. As Kate mentioned, last week we had a NTIA presentation, I guess is what it would be, but we went to Sugar Hill. You guys should have all gotten an invitation to go to that, but we went there and met with Senator Hassan, Tom Perez, and Alan Dickinson, who's head of communications. Tom Perez is a White House advisor to the president on intergovernmental affairs. And it was just a really good time to talk about the broadband project here in Grafton County and hear some stories from different people. We did have our superintendent was one of the speakers there that talked about how important internet is to education. So it was just a really good time to talk about the need for broadband and celebrate the grant and the project that's moving forward. So that was a good time we had last week.
What is NTIA?
National Telecommunication Interoperability Agency, something like that. Big federal department that's in charge of communication. Wanted to let people know, FEMA will be holding a public open house meeting for community officials and residents regarding the pending flood insurance rate maps that we talked about last meeting. They'll go into effect February 8th. This is an opportunity for community officials and residents to chat one-on-one with FEMA representatives on finding their property on the new flood maps, understanding flood risks, and learning more about flood insurance. There'll be no formal presentation. It'll really just be an open house for you to ask questions or talk to them. That'll be on January 10th, which is just a couple days from now, from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the Plymouth Town Hall. So for more information, you can get a hold of me and I can get you in touch with the person that's in charge of that if anybody wants to go. Thought I'd just share some of the open elected positions coming up this year. They were posted on the listserv. I saw those today. They'll be out. We have a 1-year position on the budget committee, 2-year position on the budget committee and supervisor checklist, a 3-year position for 2 selectmen, 1 trustee of trust funds, 1 cemetery trustee, 1 library trustee, 2 zoning board of adjustment members, and 3 budget committee members. A 4-year appointment to supervisor the checklist and a 6-year appointment to the supervisor of the checklist. So if people are interested in running for any of those offices, see the town clerk and she can help you with sign up.
Are you eliminating the 1-year option for the select board member?
No, it
think
was a
that-
cycle in. So in order to cycle it in, so we had them in 3, because they're all 3-year appointments, but to cycle in so that we got up to 5, there was a 1 year, and then it goes to 3 for the next time. So we wouldn't have people exiting all at once.
So there's no more one-year position.
No, it's all, they're all three.
I just learned something.
You can hang out with us for 3 years.
Fire chief wanted us to just remind people, that, remind people of ice safety. We've had above average temperatures until lately. The ice has recently formed, so just be careful when you're out on the ice. Make sure you're checking for the thickness of the ice and just remember, ice thickness isn't the same across the entire lake. So if you check one spot, that doesn't mean the entire lake's safe. So just be safe when you're out there and make sure to check ice thickness before you go. I would like to talk to the board a little bit before I get to my last thing. We're talking Whitney Hall, that project's moving forward. I would like to schedule the groundbreaking ceremony for next Tuesday. I was thinking 3:30-ish, but I wanted to see what the board thought. We will have people traveling down from Breadloaf, so they'll be made to the other side of Vermont coming across. They're trying to be a little cognizant of their time too.
That's the 16th.
Yeah, I was thinking 3:30 because that's when the MPAC normally meets. And if we just kept that same meeting time, Breadloaf used to coming, MPAC used to coming, and we can invite them.
What's that date again?
It's the 16th, Tuesday, the 16th.
3:30.
What do your calendars look like?
I won't be available until 4.
Till 4.
I could be there at like 4:05, 4:03. Not exactly.
I'm fine with it.
They want to do 4 o'clock?
Yeah, we can do it.
I think 4 is right.
We'll do 4 o'clock. That'll work.
Thank you.
It's like at least 3 minutes to organize. She'll be fine.
We can do that. It will be held in
Short commute for
in the
Alice.
theater portion of Whitney Hall. Cleaning that up a little bit, but they have not started demoing that. And then one last thing, you may have seen it on the listserv, but I wanted to read it here tonight, just so people have another sense that you may have seen DPW spraying a brown liquid on the road before this weekend's storms. It was an anti-icing program with magnesium chloride solution. The mag chloride uses molasses as a carrying vehicle. The principle behind anti-icing is to ensure that there's no bond between the snow or the ice as it hits the road. And it makes it a little bit easier to remove the snow and ice from the roadway as they move forward. The pre-treated roads will show a brown residue. The residue is the mag chloride and molasses mixture. It will not harm your vehicle. In fact, it should help protect it from salt, sulfurine, and calcium chlorides. One advantage of using molasses mag chloride is that it's found to be less corrosive than salt. In fact, the Pacific Snow Fighters, the Corrosion Scale Authority, show that mag chloride is corrosive at a point of 11.9, where salt is based at 100 and distilled water is based at 0. So it's a little bit better for your vehicles, and it's a little bit better for our vehicles as we're putting it out. One lingering concern is the molasses base, that it may attract animals and deer. Jeremy Clay has been studying that, our highway supervisor, for a few years, and has found no evidence and has not seen it in the towns that he's worked in where there were more deer strikes or anything because of it. So we're fairly confident that that's not an issue. And then talking with the Conservation Commission, mag chloride is a better chemical than calcium chloride to use around the water sources and the lakes. So if you have any questions, please contact DPW and they can help explain it a little bit better.
Do you know if the state makes any use of this?
I don't know what they're using. I know the two storms that they've used it on, it's really helped. Last year they did it on one storm and everybody around us was calling in their crews at 4 o'clock and our guys came in at their normal time because there was something on the roads. So
It does it fairly extensively.
Yeah.
Saturday night, as it was dusting, it was very good.
So if you see it, that's what they're doing. And if you have people that have questions or concerns about it, have them contact DPW and they can help explain what. That's the end of my.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board on the town manager's reports? Anybody in the public have a quick question or comment on the town manager's report?
I have a question. My name is Steve Patton.
Okay.
So the brown liquid, we didn't see any of that. Or we did see the DPW putting down straight salt on the sidewalks and on our road.
Yeah, they will use that during the storm.
And you'll see distinct lines on the road. It's almost like when you pick up a sand pail at the beach and it has a leak. It's my best, my best unofficial description, but it's, they gave a really nice explanation during Conservation Commission. Jeremy Heyman explained to us that because I did not know this, but he was explaining how the lines give you the opportunity to have it either be melting or give you some grip. So it was kind of an interesting little mini physics lesson on it. So definitely if you have questions,
You
you
might
need your name.
want to mention, Susan Brown,
Okay.
you might want to mention that Hanover's been doing it for a couple of years. And if you go up Rudsboro Road, you can see it and you can see how well it works. It's fabulous.
Tom Claus, just a quick question. Do you know how it is as far as lake is concerned? Is it better or worse than salt?
Magnesium chloride's better than salt.
Okay, good. I'll hear that. Thank you.
Let's move on to the business of the evening. So we have the Methodist Hill Property Use Committee presentation, which I'm hoping is why many of you are here. Susan, if you want to come up, and the other members of the board, I think,
Yes.
who are present, we have enough to,
Tom, want to come up? There's 3 chairs. Is Jason here?
well, I don't think Jason, but we could always bring another.
Ryan Little's a surgeon, so he doesn't
That's okay.
with 2 toddlers. So, anybody here? First of all, I want to thank the committee. I want to thank you, Ed. I want to thank Kevin, who have sat with us. Tom Claus, you're here somewhere. Hi.
Oh, Kevin, you don't escape.
I'm a little nervous.
Sure.
Jason Arsenault, Barbara Jones, and Ryan Little, who's probably out curing somebody. And I also want to thank Paul Whaler, Harrison Drinkwater, Paul Bianco. They have been so helpful to us. And Dr. Tice, you added some of the history. You have in your packet, first of all, the maps, all the minutes, and in the back of the packet are the forestry reports. So that if you want to ask us questions and you didn't bring stuff with you, we have come up with a recommendation. I've provided Emily with an electronic copy, but I would like to read it. May I do that?
Yeah, if you want to just summarize it, I think since we've all read it, we get it.
Well, I think the public would like to hear it.
Okay.
We recommend that the property on Methodist Hill Road be sold at auction at a cost to cover the back taxes owed, plus any administrative and legal fees associated with the sale. There are approximately 25 acres on the southeast corner, which could be developed. It is recommended that a reverter clause be used to ensure that a minimum of 3, but not more than 5 housing units be built, with each property accessible from Methodist Hill Road. The remaining approximately 70 to 80 acres shall be deeded for conservation use, with the ability to develop trails on it for hiking, mountain biking, snowshoeing, and cross-country skiing. It must also be made available and easily accessible to the public, preferably with a small parking area. To minimize the impact on wildlife and to maintain the serenity of this area, snowmobiles, ATVs, and other motorized vehicles should be prohibited. The recommendation is being made for the following reasons. The overwhelming feedback we received from the abutters and other Enfield residents is that the primary use for this property should be for recreational purposes, to preserve the history of the land, to maintain the wildlife habitat, and to have a conservation area in this part of town. The proposal adheres to the town's master plan, including providing much needed housing, but also maintaining the rural character of the town. The housing will most likely not be low-income housing, but will help preserve lower-income housing that would otherwise likely have been bought and upgraded or moved from. This proposal provides the best economic benefit for the town by selling the property and would provide future tax revenue from both the land and housing development. This land already has interested buyers, so it will most likely sell quickly. The few houses which could be developed on this property would have only a minimal impact on the town's resources, traffic, and water use in the area, which is a major concern for many of the abutters and nearby residents. And that is our recommendation. We talked to anybody that would talk to us at our meetings. Everybody who came had a chance to talk, had a chance to tell us their opinions, and we listened to them, and we were glad they came. I believe that Ms. Jones has a statement that she would like to make because she disagreed with some of our recommendations.
Okay, I
And
think,
that we would be glad to answer any questions you have.
let's start with any questions from the board on this first piece, and then we'll go to your,
And there are extra copies if people want
yeah, we all have them in our
them.
packet.
Yes, you have
Did you
them
have
in the
something you
packet.
wanted to distribute too, or
Yeah.
just a statement you wanted to just hand that around, and then does anybody from the board have a question, a preliminary question on
keep one.
this letter? Oh, yeah, that would be good.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Tracy.
I had a question. Can you define what you meant by having each of the housing units accessible from Methodist Hill?
That Methodist Hill, we had a site visit. I wasn't allowed to go because I'm an old, but there's a site visit. There are only a very few acres that are worthwhile to develop. Jim Kelleher, the developer, came to one of our meetings.
No, I meant by, let me clarify. In other words, were you referring to individual driveways, or you referring to the possibility of a cluster development?
Not a cluster development, it's R5. And we believe that we needed to go with the zoning regulations as they stand. Each lot that could possibly be developed would have to have 250 feet on Methodist Hill Road. We don't see, I mean, you know, if you build two houses, they might share a driveway, but that's up to the road people. Driveway cuts are up to the road people, not up to the developers or things like, you gotta go to the
Okay,
road.
so you weren't specifying 5 individual driveways if 5 homes were developed?
Yeah, we
Okay.
can't specify that. We thought it would be a nice idea, but the thing is, sir, that the developable land really is only on Methodist Hill Road, on the road. If you go up there, now that the leaves are gone, you can see a foundation near that Class 6 road.
I've hiked it.
Yeah, and the other thing about Methodist Hill Road is it's not the best road in town.
Where?
Yeah. Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you. Just trying to clarify that little bit.
Yes,
verbiage.
Go ahead, John.
You do mention at the end of the introductory paragraph, snowmobiles, ATVs, and other motorized vehicles should be prohibited. Does that include electric bikes?
That's a good question, isn't it? Because
Yep.
that's the question I have about the rail trail. I think that, and the electric bikes go 30 miles an hour. So I think it's a question that
But they are
who make
quiet,
these regulations have to figure out,
right?
and I wish they would do it soon.
They already have. The state has classified an electric bike up to a certain classification as a non-motorized vehicle. They're allowed on the rail trail by
Yes,
state
they are.
definition.
Yes, they are, and they go very fast.
So I think we would probably recommend, wouldn't we, that we follow those laws?
I think so, but, it's 70 or 80 acres is not enormous like the rail trail. And, nobody sees any possibility of reconstituting the, McAllister Road because it's just not gonna be possible. The geography of that piece of property is something that has to be very much considered because it's really not conducive to building. Mr. Kelleher said that there would be no place further up from the road that would be worth developing because it would be so hard to get a road to it. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Other questions for the, go ahead.
Yes.
Is my understanding correct that the recommendation is to sell 25 acres on the southeast corner at auction and retain the remaining 70 to 80 acres?
No, the recommendation is to sell the piece. One of the things that I learned was that, when it's sold, anything beyond what's owed in taxes and fees goes back to the person that didn't pay their taxes. And across the street, there's a lot went for 275, is that right? $2,250,000. So if we sold the lots, we would enrich the guy that didn't pay his taxes. That was the part that bothered me the most. So we think that it should be sold public auction for enough to recover what the town lost in taxes plus whatever fees we have to pay to do the sale, et cetera, and so forth. Does that answer your question? It was complicated.
Yeah.
You're saying
I can explain it a little.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, like, if everybody understands, I don't wanna.
No, please, go ahead.
Well, some of what we talked about was, I mean, you can do this in one or two parcels, but we were talking about selling it in one parcel with some restrictions on the sale. That some of the land would be conserved, 3 to 5 houses would be built. And that would protect the tax interest of the town by making sure there were some homes built up there. Personally, yeah,
Oh, the blower is on. Don't ever skimp on insulation or you won't be able to hear people in meetings.
so really the recommendation was to sell the parcel in one piece with some restrictions on the sale. That part of it would be put into conservation. Part of it would be used to build 3 to 5 homes. I think the spread of homes was to give some flexibility on what actually can be developed in that corner. With the understanding that if you've got more than 5, it really starts to degrade the rural character. It's probably not doable with the land that's up there, but maintaining the character of Methodist Hill and trying to keep that rural character was of big importance as well. And just making sure that a little bit of it went into developing some houses that help with the housing crisis and to help maintain some sort of tax income coming into the town for the long term.
It's very helpful. Thank you.
Other questions?
First, thank you. You guys took on a difficult task. It's hard. You sifted through a lot of strange and various scenarios and talked to everybody. Appreciate it. You came out with a very reasonable and helpful recommendation. And so my questions are really on the implementation side, which we don't have to get into at this point.
One
You guys
of
did a
the
great job.
things that
Thank you.
we could say is that the committee worked very well together. And we got really good help from the people who live up there. You'll find Paul Wheeler's history in your packet, and Dr. Price talked about the Bosworth sergeants who lived there for years. One of the things I learned is that Methodist Hill community, they had a church, they had a school, and they had a store. It was a really vigorous part of the town. But I've only lived here since '89, split it off. The other thing that you probably, it isn't here, but it's in there, was 900 cars a day used Methodist Hill Road to shortcut over to 120. That's a lot of traffic on a road that's not very good. And that's one of the reasons we thought there should be some conditions in the deed that you don't want. One of the things we talked about was low-income housing because it's close to 89. And aside from the fact that it's geographically not possible, that would put a lot more pressure on Methodist Hill Road, which isn't the best road in town. If there are no more questions. Barbara
I'd like to just.
Yeah.
See, so does that kind of cover for you before we move on to Barbara? I don't have any questions.
I think so. We'll need to get what the select board's feedback is and I can.
Yep,
help
so and
answer
then we'll move to
questions.
Barbara, do some questions, open it up to the public and go to the online.
Yeah.
I do want to thank the Hinshaws for this terrific report.
Wasn't
It
it?
is extremely thorough and informative. I think they paid a lot of money for it, to be honest,
Well,
and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
it was 85 pages. And it was very valuable to us to help us decide what would be the best thing to do. I didn't mention in public, Barbara Patch came to our first meeting of Patch Orchards. For those of you that don't know, the Lebanon border is the back border of this piece of property, and it backs on Patch Orchards. And they had some interest, and she had some interesting things to say. It was valuable. It was valuable to talk to the people that live up there. I learned so much. Barbara, go ahead, make your statement.
Go ahead, Barbara.
All right.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I read it? Cause I can't.
Yeah, no, I think yours is not so bulleted, so it makes sense. We
Okay.
didn't get it in advance. Thank you.
When I volunteered to be on this committee, I was totally committed to exploring the parcel's potential for low-cost or affordable housing. I looked at the site's location, considered the possibilities that were being put forth to the committee, and as a student of cluster housing, wanted to explore how that would work. I asked Ed to invite a developer to come to the committee to give us a realistic view of how this property could be developed. The developer, Mr. Kelleher, testified that 2.5 acre lots in the area would go for, as Susan said, $250,000 each. The infrastructure would be difficult given the slope in the wetlands, and that a developer would most likely go bankrupt in the process, and that the houses would need to be sold for way over $1 million. Consequently, these could never, ever be affordable by middle income earners. Mr. Kelleher's testimony convinced me that going forward with any development would end up costing the town more than they would get in property taxes, that going down that road would probably end up with the town dealing with stormwater runoff and services commitments far exceeding property tax income. Having been completely turned around by the facts, I came to the very clear conclusion that taking the Hinshaw's offer to heart, that they would keep the acreage as is, and that they would steward the land in a way the town could never afford to do, both with money and person power, made more sense than any other option. The town of Enfield is not in a position to spend money on this land, and developing it is no guarantee that the town would be off the hook and unknown. With the Hinshaw's offer, they are guaranteed to keep the land as it is and leave it as a resource for everyone, including the flora and fauna. Looking at the committee's recommendation, I see an act of antagonism, sticking a finger into the eyes of these Enfield residents who testified for conservation. To my memory, all but one person spoke to the benefits of conservation versus development. This recommendation, it also inscrutably, aggressively doubles down against the Hinshaw's offer, literally demanding they develop 3 to 5 houses, and if they don't or can't, Enfield pulls out this reverter clause, which I don't remember agreeing to in the committee. I predict that if this path is taken by the select board, there will be a string of legal debacles, and who knows what quagmires the town will be held responsible for. It would be, in my opinion, an epic mistake to embark on this misguided, short-sighted recommendation. The end, Barbara Jean Jones.
All right. Questions or comments from the board on this? I think my one question would be, since it was clearly in the letter from the committee with the reverter clause, but you're saying the committee didn't agree, we have other members who did.
I don't remember agreeing to the reverter clause, which I think is
I think we said,
awful.
I don't think we said revert, we didn't use the word reverter clause,
Oh,
but we said conditions on the deed and restrictions on the deed,
I
and
think
that's
we
the same
changed
thing,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah,
No,
we
I
talked a lot about a reverter clause or something similar, which is used very often.
Well, anyway, the reverter clause is pretty damaging to the person who purchases this, in my opinion.
And so when I'm looking at this, it looks like the committee voted in favor with the exception of you. Is that
That's correct.
correct? Okay. That helps. Other questions? Comments? I'd like to open it up to the public if we don't have board ones and hear from the public. So I'm gonna remind you of my favorite things. Say your name clearly for our minute taker, no crosstalk, and try to keep it to 3 minutes so we can fit everyone in. Because I think we have a lot of interested parties here. Go ahead. We have David Frack with his hand up first.
I'm David Frack. I live on Lock Haven Road. I'm not quite sure which of my 3 town hats I'm wearing tonight. But I would like to make the board aware of a third option for disposing of this property. And it's the option that colleagues of mine in some far past legislative session determined was in the best interest of the state of New Hampshire. And that is the ability of the select board to make a positive finding that a property that they own does not, that they can dispose of it if it's in the public interest through any means that they so choose. They don't have to do a sealed bid. They don't have to do an auction. And in the case of vacant land, the state is definitely in favor of maintaining open land. It's also in favor of combining land that has been previously subdivided with neighboring lands. And all of this is enshrined in RSA 80:80. And I would urge the select board to consider that option to make a positive determination as required by 80:80 that this land should be undeveloped and that it should be combined with the neighboring property from which it was broken off many years ago.
Could I ask for a clarification? Does 80:80 insist we do this, or
No.
do they suggestion?
They suggest it.
That's all we need to say. Thank you.
Legal option.
An option. Okay. Additional comments?
Hi, I'm Madeline Johnson. I just have a quick question, your question about the reverter clause, and I think, has the town, attorney weighed in on any of this, made any suggestions
I
or
talked to him
comments about
it.
it?
I talked to him about it and he's fine with it. We've done multiple reverter clauses with him before.
Other folks? I'm gonna buzz. Oh.
Paul Bianco, 38 Birch Lane. First of all, due respect to the Methodist Hill Property Use Committee. They did a wonderful job and the folks were very, very easy to work with. Here's my opinion as a resident of the state of, or as a resident of Enfield. Our approach is to show that based on the information described here, and I have a document that I can provide for public access to the town that shows the details of a number of the comments that I'll make this evening. Okay, if that's okay, I can bring that up and give it to you, Ed. The alternative solutions that we see, in contrary to what we've heard from the recommendation from the committee, is as follows, and will be made pointed here. 3 points to address in the current recommendations. First of all, any concept of affordable housing is discounted by the calculations that are provided in that document, which I'll provide to the town. whether it's based on New Hampshire, affordable housing criteria, or it's based on the town of Enfield and neighboring Lebanon. The comment was made also that there is in what we often refer to as the gentrification hypothesis. That is that if you provide housing for the wealthy, they will not take housing away from the poor. First of all, gentrification is typically a problem in urban areas with a large amount of urban renewal. Okay, that doesn't clearly fit the case here in Enfield. The question was posed though, well, what about lakefront property? Well, first of all, in terms of lakefront property, when I did an analysis of how many properties we have, it's about 7.5% of the properties in the town of Enfield. And so generally those properties, first of all, are primary vacation and summer homes. So they really don't fit the criteria of what we consider for single family dwellings. Secondly, when we talked about this and I was at all of the meetings, I did not hear evidence to that effect. Is there evidence that we do have a gentrification problem in terms of housing within the town of Enfield? Okay. And so therefore, when we look at that provision that was given as a reason, we really just don't have the hard data that show that that is a reason in which we would take that into account. So the conclusions that we have here in this first point is that number one, affordable housing is clearly, it's a tax problem, it's a mortgage lender problem, it's a developer problem.
You're gonna wanna.
I will. And it is not clearly going to be a problem in terms of land availability. David Fractal has already mentioned in terms of the case for RSA 80:80, what concerns us a little bit about that is if the cost of the land and its taxes and its fees are only covered, what are the Bosworths gonna think? If they understand RS 80:80, that they could get fair market value back to them, it's not comfortable. I agree with Susan on that, but the law is the law, or the court decision is the court decision. So let me bring this to a close in terms of the conclusions. When one looks at the document that I will provide to the town manager, as well as the points that we've made this evening, I see three options. First of all, facilitate the purchase of lot 29 by the Hinshaws. It's a suitable property. In perpetuity clauses can be added to it. And in that case, there, if sold at fair market value, we would not incur the potential for liability from the Bosworths, who may be looking for that money once that parcel is sold. B, which is not as favorable, as the town keeps the land for the same purpose as conservation. Of course, the town receives no money for that in any way. But I think the final point I'd like to make to the select board is that I think there's just too many information gaps. I think there's too many legal matters that still need to be resolved, and I respect the town manager's decision not to bring in counsel at this point because of the cost, and that's fine. But when we look at potential liability from stormwater drainage, when we look at the potential for liability from the previous owners of the property, we think that there really just needs to be more homework done, put on the basis that was concluded by the Methodist Hill Property Use Committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
For those who don't know, Mr. Bianco is chair of the homeowners association on Birch Lane.
And that's who you were.
No, ma'am.
You're referring-
Please let me make it clear.
Oh.
Susan is correct.
Yeah.
I do not represent Fieldstone Ridge Owners Association. I do not have concurrence from the board of directors for this
Okay.
information, nor from the members. I'm speaking as Paul Bianco, 38 Birch Lane.
Okay, so you said we and us, so who is the we and us? Is there another partner in your we and us, or?
It's the general folks that we've had these discussions with.
Oh, okay, you're
within our
representing.
neighborhood
Got
community.
it,
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
but not officially, got it.
Correct.
Thank you for that. Okay.
Right, perhaps. I have two sections. One is just general comments, and then page 2 is how the board reached its conclusion. General comments. Is the town, my first question to the select board, is the town even required to sell the property? I have not found anything in the RSAs or the court case that references or deals with this type of issue that specifically says the town is required to sell the property. RSA 80 is the whole chapter that deals with tax lien prop.
I think they can't, the The blower just came on and I think they can't hear you in the back.
Okay, I'll try to speak a little louder.
Yeah, it's a hard one,
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can turn it down a little.
Turn them both up.
We're gonna turn the heat down a little bit, you guys, so.
it's warm.
But I think it's warm enough with all of us in here. That way maybe we'll have a chance of hearing better.
What if this?
Okay, keep going.
Okay, RSA 80 is the chapter that deals with tax lien properties. It's pretty extensive. In that chapter, there's RSA 42A, retention for public use. Says cities may and towns may retain and hold for public use, and goes on and deals a little bit more. RSA 80V says it's basically the same thing. RSA 8091 says nothing in this chapter shall obligate a municipality, excuse me, you know what I mean, to dispose of property acquired by tax deed, except as provided in RSA 8089, which deals in 89 deals with the 3-year opportunity to repurchase prior to a tax deed, changing from a lien to a deed. That 3-year window of opportunity. So numerous of times in that chapter, it specifically says you are not required to sell the property. There was a New Hampshire Supreme Court case, Polensky versus Town of Bedford in 2020, that only addressed, and the court it specifically said in its opinion that it is only addressing RSA 8089, which is the selling of the property after the 3-year window of repurchase that was available to a previous owner. It's stated numerous of times that it was a very narrow decision, only addressing RSA 8089, that said if the town sells the property, then the proceeds are required to go to the previous owner, or any excess proceeds go to the previous owner. Nowhere does it say in that court opinion that the town is required to sell the property after 3 years.
I don't think that's correct anymore.
Wait, whoa, no cross section. Alice.
Was the committee under the impression that selling was required?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, there's a reason we wanted it to be sold, because if the
Right.
town keeps
I mean,
it,
I just wanted to understand the
there's gonna be
context
an
you were working.
enormous expense
I would-
to the town.
I would like to
That's
go
fine.
back and let Kurt finish and then we'll let further people comments, just to kind of stay organized.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. No, it's fine. I think.
So,
it's a little-
if the town does decide to sell the property, it should consider RSA 8086, which is what David Frack was commenting on, referencing. And for the purpose of this section, the authority to dispose of the property as justice may require, is the quotes they have, shall include the power of the governing body to, and it goes 6B, section B, sell undeveloped parcels to and abutters for consolidation into adjoining lots for the purpose of affordable housing development, comma, preserving open space, comma, or reducing development density. And preserving open space and reducing development density is part of the master plan, along with affordable housing, which I don't see happening on that parcel, just due to the cost from a developer's end.
Yeah.
Cost.
You're gonna let him.
Okay. And the butter did state at the public meeting, they were interested in purchasing a property. Committee's decision to sell. I'm trying to understand how they came up with X number of, all of the butters who spoke said retain the property. 16 people that spoke in general said retain the property as is. Only 5, I went through the minutes and counted up the names. Only 5 people in the minutes stated they wanted to sell and carve off lots. If the town sells the highest bidder and subdivides X lots to be created, just creating lots to be sold is gonna eliminate a lot of potential bidders. Because it's gonna require a developer to do that. And because the cost to go in, clear the land, stump it, level it, and build a house is beyond, especially 5 houses, up to 5, is beyond the means of most people. And then with the remaining acreage, who is going to buy that? Does it go to is it annexed to one of the house lots that sold? Does it remain with the original buyer? If it's a developer, they're not gonna want it because they can't develop it. They can't log it for another 50 years because all the trees have been taken off that are of value. And then as far as regarding, building houses.
Can I make a brief comment? We're up to 5 minutes.
Yeah, now you have to let everybody go.
Yeah, so, and I know that we interrupted you a couple times for various
I
things, but,
discounted that
yeah,
already.
okay. I'm trying to be kind. Why don't you say your final remarks and
Okay.
then send the rest? And I would say that for everybody, right? Like, you guys are always welcome to send, your letters and comments into Ed for distribution to us. We do read them.
Yeah, okay, can I just finish my last little bit here?
You got one more sentence, my friend.
Okay, if the first buyer decides to purchase it with the house lot conditions and then sells it to a third party, who's responsible for enforcing the deed restrictions?
Okay.
And is the town going to take the first person to court if they don't build the houses?
Watch out for Barbara behind
Sorry.
you.
I can fight back.
Okay, sorry, go ahead,
I
Ed.
just want to explain one thing, and it weighed a lot on the committee's decision, there's attorney's opinions based on the court opinion that if the town was to keep the land, that we would have to pay the difference between the appraised value and what the taxes and fees were on the land.
Mhm.
It's a real gray area. Some attorneys say yes, some attorneys say no. It's back and forth. NHMA had an article that I distributed to the committee that said you really should pay that difference because it was what's owed to the landowner.
It's a lot of money that we have to pay.
Go ahead, Dan.
Dan Kylie. I think this committee's done a real good job. I went to 2 or 3 of their meetings, and I hope that you will take their recommendation as it's written. Thank you.
Jean Patton, I haven't followed this, at all until now, and it seems to me anyways, on the surface and listening to the recommendations, that it seems like a great compromise to keep some and sell some. I don't know all the legalities of it. I'm hoping and praying that it's a lot clearer than Johnston Drive. But I guess I feel that this seems like a good proposal, and hopefully the selectmen have, read and understand and, know what they need to do to move forward with this.
Steve Patton. So my biggest concern would be that if this property is sold to one person, it would be put in current use, all of it. So we have a shortage of building lots, not just Enfield, it's everywhere. And I have talked to the developer some. So I don't know why the town doesn't subdivide this property front to back in 3 or 5 pieces and sell it as house lots. The town is not against stickers. The state of New Hampshire will ensure that whatever is wetlands will be protected and just get this property gone and not let it cost Enfield any more money. Thanks.
Thank you. Paul? Further comments? Go ahead.
Great. I find it interesting when the committee did put in a lot of work and did good work on it. But when you started your report, you indicated that the vast majority of the testimony or the whatever people told you was that they wanted the land put to use for recreation. But the way the recommendation is made is put the whole focus on the building lots, whether or not there should be building lots. And I find it somewhat curious to to recommend a minimum number of building lots. Because by doing so, it seems to me, you're eliminating potential bidders who aren't able to or don't want to develop it in that way. Is that in the best interest of the town to eliminate certain bidders? And aren't you in fact making that piece of property, the conditions more restrictive than what that area of town is zoned for? So is the select board able to put those restrictions in place, or does it have to go through the zoning department?
There was some thought and talk about cluster housing. Birch Lane is 2.5 acres, I believe, because it's clustered. But we think that since that area of town is R5, that we would not sell. We thought the lot should be 5 acres because that's what zoning says. We didn't say that we thought things should be clustered or not. And the other thing that I think is whatever we put in the deed is negotiable between the buyer and the select board. It was not up to the committee to tell the select board what they should do, to just offer the possibilities of what could be done and how it could be done.
But if you put into the deed or make that a condition of the sale, that there have to be at least 3 homes built or 3 building lots, then you're eliminating the ability of many people.
Susan, I'd like to let him
I
finish.
think that.
No, Susan, I'd like to let him finish his sentence.
Sorry.
You're eliminating the ability of many people who would like to buy the property and use it for purposes that are legal in terms of the way it's zoned, but you're telling them that they can't participate or they can't buy unless they're going to build 3 homes.
So just to be clear for everybody, Susan read it earlier, but the recommendation was a minimum of 3, but not more than 5. And that's the committee's recommendation. We're considering all of the feedback from them and then also you guys tonight and anything that's sent in.
And I do think that when you get to the point of just, if you decide to sell it, that what goes into the deed is negotiable between the buyer and the select board and was not anything that the committee should recommend. And so we left it as loose as we could.
Yeah, this is a recommendation for us to build off of. I want to make tonight about hearing feedback and, you know, I think everybody's thoughts and their feelings are valid. We may not all share them. We may not all share the same thought process, but I want to get as much information out and into our hands and into our brains so that we can make a good decision for everyone. Before I take you again, I think, did you already? No. Yes, I want to let other people speak before I come back to second comments. Okay. Go ahead.
Gary Hubbard, I live on Methodistville. I'd like to commend the committee for their work on this particular project and all my neighbors for showing up and to all the meetings and having their inputs. I didn't show up in any meetings. I feel guilty about that. But my only concern, major concern with this is requiring a potential buyer to build even a minimum number of lots or have a minimum number of lots. And I don't know of any development in this town that the town has approved that has actually been a cash cow for the town. I've never known of development or subdivisions or things like that as being a cash or a financial benefit to the town. Whereas more light industrial things, that type of thing are more of a benefit for the town coffers or whatever. So to say you have to build 3 lots because the town potentially would realize revenue from that particular thing, I don't see how three lots would generate revenue in that the three lots basically pay for what they consume mostly. I mean, we pay for fire and safety and the roads to be plowed and our children to go to school and things like that. And this particular part of town is as far away as you can get from any of the services that the town provides. So they're not necessarily the cheapest services that the town can provide. So I would say that there shouldn't be they might be able, you might be able to say you could build a maximum number of five because you determine that the lots, you know, as a recommendation, that the lots, would have to be in a certain area or whatever. But to say there's a minimum of three and then the reverts back to the town doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you. Other public comments?
I'm Jean Hinshaw, and I want to ask a question first. Aaron Frost is here. I just want to make you aware of the fact that he's the forester of the Full Circle Forestry Company that, and group that did the study that you have received. And so if there's any questions about the, land, the soil or something, he's here as a resource for answering them. So I'm going to stick with our consistent message, which is we have wanted to acquire this land before there was a committee or anything like that, being abutters and knowing that that land was, perhaps leading its way into tax default. But our desire is to acquire it and to help conserve it for the community, for recreational purposes, to build trails, and to preserve the history that's very rich there. We've always said we would like to reserve the right to build a guest house for our grandchildren, because we have 10 and almost 11 of them now. And so perhaps that would provide some of the tax revenues that the town's looking for. And we also appreciate the research that people have done here on the 80:80, because it's a little bit of a complicated web, but I think the town should have a in-depth legal conversation about that, because I think that by not following a process, if it is sold a public auction and establishing a fair market value, the town runs the risk on either side of the ledger as far as risk. If the previous owners might come back and say, wait, you sold it for less than fair market value, and I could have gotten that. And there might be a claim there, or a town, people in town might say, wait, you could have sold it for more. And we could have gotten it into our coffers, because there is enough language I've learned, and it is gray, that says that after 3 years, it could happen, that it just stays with the town. So I would just urge that. And we also have done a little research on it. Earhart's the expert, but I agree with I don't think there should be a minimum number until it's really studied what the soil can support. Because that one area, about 25 acres, and maybe a little less than that, is really the developable part, and it may or may not support that many houses. So that would need to be discussed. But we would like to conserve the land. We care about the history. We care about the community. We want people to have access to the outdoors so that they can refresh themselves and see nature, feel good about that, learn about the people who lived here before, because there's many stone walls and cellar doors and things like that. So that's always been our goal. And we want the town to be able to get whatever proceeds it can, because we care about the town as well. So, and there's one more thing and then I'll stop, and then my husband might want to say something. Which is, there are charitable ways to perhaps come up with kind of a win-win here, so that the town can achieve some of those revenues or ongoing funds that would be equivalent to what tax revenues from houses built might produce. And I agree that it costs the town money to have families living and utilizing infrastructure, as well as the gain of the tax revenue. So that's a something that could be looked at kind of mathematically. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there public comments? Go ahead, Harrison.
Harrison Drinkwater, also on Methodist Hill. It's been a learning process, ever since the committee started. It's been a learning process for me to understand pretty basic assumptions. And I appreciate first of all, I appreciate what the Henshaws have been so generous to offer and stay with the idea for as long as they have. But one thing that really struck me though was in August during one of the committee meetings. And Ed, you'll have to back me up on this because I'm kind of going to read from your findings. But Ed and working with Julie Huntley did a study on what are the likely tax revenue returns by developing house lots on Methodist Hill. And if I could quote the minutes, I'm just saying, after he's discussed this with Julie, using this data along with the total tax collected by Enfield for school, county, state, and municipal government, it would take 25 parcels on Methodist Hill, 25 parcels to reduce the tax rate by 1 cent. And that has really stayed with me throughout these long weeks. And I just want to make sure that that kind of calculation is understood by everyone here.
Do you have those numbers you can share with us?
I can look back in there, but really what it's saying, I mean, if you look at the town, you know, I want to say it's somewhere right around the 20 to 30,000 for an opinion on the town's tax rate. But when you get to the big scheme of things, it's one house makes a small impact. That doesn't mean you don't develop houses. That's where most all of our tax revenue comes from, but you know, I just wanted the committee to realize that 1 or 2 houses up there is not gonna your tax rate by a whole bunch. And so I can definitely get you those numbers and show you where we were bringing those numbers from.
The idea being somewhat that the goal is not to be a windfall for individual homeowners, like, oh, hey, I'm gonna get a big rebate on my taxes because they built a house here. It's that it's a shared amount across the full town tax liability. That makes sense. Go ahead.
So I'm Parker and Sean. Lost around with this guy over here. But basically, I think there's really 2 premises for us. One, or sort of 3, I guess. But one is we really do care about the wildlife and the impact that 89 had coming through and to eliminate any more space there is a sensitive issue. We're also sensitive to the fact that this could be a real opportunity for the town to have some revenue. And it seems like, what's the definition of that term, Gene? Pilot, yeah. So there might be a way, if we could understand what the real revenue opportunity is for the city, for us to just guarantee that tax rate and not sell those properties, which is pretty weird if we buy it and then we have to sell it and just, it's complicated. So it seems like there might be a better compromise along that way to make sense. And the other thing, the last point I was going to make is the actual studies that have been done for the city about what they wanted it strategically to look like relative to wildlife and opportunity for recreation. This would be very consistent with the master plan that's in place today, at least. So I'll just leave it at that.
I think just so that everybody knows, so right now the master plan has done the required chapters and then recreation and conservation are on deck. So that's something that's being done. Yes, go ahead. You can tell people where you are on that.
Wearing my master plan task force hat at this point, David Frack. We have not yet done the conservation and recreation chapters, but that is not to say that the 300 and some odd people that took part in the process were silent on those 2 issues. And I think if you go to the land use chapter, there is sufficient language that at least leads me to believe that the town is very concerned with having recreational opportunities on the other side of the interstate, which this land could potentially provide, however it is disposed of. And, you know, recreation means different things to different people. Personally, I like the committee's recommendation that it be non-motorized, but, you know, that's certainly something for down the road. But I would definitely say that given the desires of the community to have housing that is affordable, available to, services like water and sewer, and being able to walk to amenities is certainly consistent with what we heard. And building more in the hinterlands in the R5 is probably not what a lot of the people in the town are looking to see happen, at least not in the immediate future. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just point out that there are a lot of themes that are cross sections within the master plan. So if you haven't had an opportunity to read, it's a really great document. And you'll see those themes of land use, even though it has a chapter, you'll see how they integrate into the other chapters. And there's some nice references in there. So thank you for that. I want to continue with folks who haven't had a chance to comment, and then I'm gonna come back around. Who would like to come and ask me? Okay, go
And
ahead.
I just want to give maybe a little bit
Your name
explanation.
again?
Oh, sorry, Tom Claus.
Thank you.
I'm part of the committee
Yes.
committee recommendation.
Yep.
And I just want to give a little bit of understanding on our thought process, because a lot of people said, oh, the majority of people did say keep it 100% conservation. And I really struggled with this. But you got to remember when we're thinking is that we're saying what's best for the community and for the town. And that took a lot of thought in what we wanted to do. And I get the local paper, and there isn't a day that goes by that I don't read about the housing crisis. And we felt that this was a real good compromise. And I'm relatively new to this area, and I can tell you that it's hard to get a doctor, it's hard to get a dentist. So it's not only affordable housing that's needed, it's, you know, the doctors and dentists and, you know, middle income need homes too. And it's a real crisis. So we just felt that keep the majority of it conservation only. So you have to maintain that wildlife habit and everything like that. We wanted to maintain that, the majority of it. But let's make a little bit of a dent in helping with the housing crisis. And it was more that than the revenue for the town. There was a reasoning for doing that. So just kind of maybe helps you understand why we came up with the recommendation that we did.
Thank you. Other folks, go ahead, Shirley.
Shirley Green. I think there's very few times that we have the opportunity of what the Henshaws are offering. And I think that to serve the whole area would be best. A few houses there are not gonna make any impact on the revenue for the town. As that really stuck out to me, what Ed said at another meeting. And I just think that the recreation and the conservation and protecting the wildlife in that area is much more valuable than what 2 or 3 houses could. Very grateful to the Henshaws for their desire to protect that land.
Other comments? Okay, before I go back to second comments, does anybody, go ahead.
Lucy, I feel like there's a lot of people that are represented that it directly is gonna affect, that have come from Methodist Hill. And with everything said about the housing, I don't think a few houses is gonna make it. And I feel like the majority of people that are really want the Henshaws to be able to have it for the right reasons. I did write down a little thing that I read about habitat loss is the main threat to New Hampshire animals. This was Kirk Dorsey from UNH. And once the homes are built, it can never go back to open space. I feel it should be conserved. Yeah, we're all
Public comment for the first time? Online? Okay, go ahead, Madeline, you have a second.
Yeah, hi, I'm Madeline Johnson. I would have just a couple comments. I'd like to say thank you for the committee's attempt to compromise and to speak for some of the people who do not always come to meetings, who can't or don't feel they have the resources or the time. As some of the people who are interested in conservation who do make a very big effort. So thank you for speaking for everybody in the town, not only the people who showed up at the meeting, but the people who are also in the newspaper, who we hear about in the newspaper. This is a big problem. Enfield population, just a little fact, has been declining for the past 10 years, well, more than 10 years. So this is true. It may not change, make a dramatic change in the tax base, but our tax base is shrinking. So that's something to consider. Another thing is what you just said about land that where houses were built. I think you just mentioned that Methodist Hill is full of the traces of houses that were once there and are not there anymore. So I think we should just remember that. And finally, as a member of the zoning board, one of the things that the most important thing that we have to consider when we deal with zoning regulations is that this is about the land. It's not about the person who has the land in that moment. So the Hinshaws are lovely people, but the next people who buy it after the Hinshaws may not be. So when these decisions are made, we have to think about the land beyond who is there now or who might be there in the future.
Barbara, you had a second?
Barbara Jones. No one's mentioned that this particular piece of land is connected to 1,000 acres in Lebanon, which makes it a really great wildlife corridor. That's it.
Are you referring to the patch property that's privately owned?
All the way to 120.
Oh, okay, so it's privately owned.
Yeah.
Okay, not a preserved parcel. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Steve Patton. So if the town keeps this property for recreation, are we going to have to hire more people to make trails and such? And about the animals, so we live in a residential area and we have more pain in the backside here eating our plants than anywhere else. So I don't think the houses are gonna scare them away.
You didn't want to mention the bear?
Yeah.
The downtown bear? Sorry, it's not funny.
Yeah.
And the turkeys. Yeah. We're lucky to have a lot of wildlife, but sometimes their sharing isn't fun. Okay, Dr. Tice?
To comment on what Mr. Patton said, I'd like to point out that the Conservation Commission has a trail master who is capable of developing volunteers to make trails without any particular cost other than the materials, if need be. And those materials can be paid for by the Conservation Commission's trust fund. So it isn't going to cost the town anything to build trails through that property. You understand me?
Yeah, I understand.
Let's not do back and forth dialogue. Comments come up here. Okay, further comments. I want to make sure Yep, go ahead. Go ahead, Shirley. We'll do Shirley and then we'll do
I
Eugene.
just wanted to add one thing. I believe if the Hinshaws, if the property was changed, that their intention is to keep it preserved conserved in perpetuity.
Okay, go ahead, Jean.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that, and I didn't earlier, so I'm glad it came up. Thank you. Yeah, we're very open to working with the Upper Valley Land Trust or some other mechanism, if that's not, the right way to go. There are other ways to do it, but to put it into conservation in perpetuity and to make a commitment to supporting that.
Yep, go ahead, Kurt.
Kurt Bernhardt. So I just want to basically sort of finish off where I left. Just a because I rushed through it so fast. Basically, if the condition, is placed in the deed that the buyer is required to subdivide and build X number of houses, the town is going to either have to enforce that or walk away from that, requirements. And to enforce it means going to court, which is gonna cost the town money. And then if the person who buys that property, the first buyer, decides, as I was saying, decides to resell it at a profit to a third party as undeveloped, undivided and unbuilt houses, with the condition that the third buyer does the subdivision and builds the houses, but they decide not to do that for whatever reason, the town, who enforces that requirement? Is the town going to take both parties to court, one of those parties to court to enforce it? So you're leaving yourself sort of like either you end up spending money if it doesn't happen, or you just walk away and just take it as a loss. And the RSA's do specifically state that it is permitted to sell directly to an abutter for a cause. And one of the causes is conservation, open space, type of thing. So you are not restricted from doing that and bypassing the whole, auction, open bidding process.
Do you have anything new to add beyond that, or if not?
No,
we're
I just
gonna-
wanted to clarify.
Okay,
Madam Chairman,
yep,
I think we're reaching the end of this.
yeah, I wanna be respectful. We have a full meeting of items that are operations beyond this. I wanna call for any new comments, and make it specifically new, not reiteration of previous points you've made. So, and I wanna have them directed to us up here so that we can kind of make sure that we finish this off, give everyone a fair chance. Steve?
Steve Patton, is it possible to move that question or thought?
I know you're stealing Jane's job. Okay, go ahead.
One sentence.
Yeah.
One of the things that came up when we were speaking with the Henshaws, since this has come up, is that they suggested that instead of saying a number, that there would be no more than 5 buildings built.
Okay, go ahead. You're in the back.
I'm
Yes,
just gonna speak.
please.
Peggy Norberry, I live on Methodist Hill, been here over 20 years. I think the generosity that the Henshaws are offering is unique and something that if we have the opportunity to take advantage of, we should. Having been there for a long time, I think the town, I have a lot of water that's being forced to my property right now. That's gonna have to be redirected. I asked Ed to look at that. I have not heard back from you. I'd appreciate it. I sent you an email in September. Dogs are killed on that road all the time because people go 50 miles an hour. The town's gonna have to put speed bumps or something if we put more houses in there. We used to use that property all the time for recreation and then people came in and logged it. I just think if we can take advantage of the generosity of these people, to preserve that land. I don't really think Enfield's putting attention to that part of our town. I've been robbed twice. I've had a dog killed on my road. There's been I have water forts on my property. Some of those other things need to be looked at, I think, which is money from the town if we're gonna try to put more houses there. So if we can have it preserved by generous people, I'm all for it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Anybody else with new comments? Online? Okay, thank you. And if you think of something new that you want to add, please go ahead and send it to Ed, right? And he'll circulate it to us, or you can write directly to all of us. But sometimes it's easier to just send it to one spot and then have it disseminated, because this is an important part about how we make decisions. So thank you all. You're welcome to stay.
When did you decided?
I don't believe anybody wants to decide this tonight. I think we need an opportunity to think about it and not make a decision on the fly. And also let anybody who wants to send in information. So we'll be putting it on, we notice every one of these discussions on our agenda. So I don't know if it'll be the next one, if we have that too full, or if it will be in two Alice, are you out of town for the next one or are you here?
I have to look at my calendar.
Okay, so we're gonna be doing some calendaring, but it will be adequately noticed so that everybody has a chance to follow along. Okay. Yeah, I'll give everybody like 3 minutes to either take a break and come back or quietly filter out. I have a little question. Are you planning on putting the recommendation on the website? I can't hear you. I know. It's very hard when people, if you want to just come over so we can hear you. I mean, it's part of the minutes, so it'd be in the body of the minutes. And what do you want to do? It's an operations thing. Are you going to stick to the recommendation?
Really have.
It will be up in one form or another.
That's all.
On their page, thank you. Yep.
The RSA. Logistics or something.
That's something that the board need to get up to speed on. I don't know if there's a board we are.
And there's a lot of different and to accomplish.
I know, well, and you know. I'm trying not to. You guys, we're finishing up on our 3 minutes, so we love having you. You're either staying to hang out with us or you're headed.
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I know we've done, but most of them have involved this level of discussion. Some have paid the taxes, they don't talk about it. I don't remember what your public.
You guys have
Can a sale of land like this be done in a non-public setting?
I'm not sure. It's not good optics, probably.
It should not be, but I think we could have a discussion if needed.
Right.
You can have contractual discussion.
No, it's a public
But
meeting.
you should have, it should be a good process.
If
Yeah.
we do an RFP, we can definitely go into non-public and look at
Right.
the, to maybe even interview some of the people.
Not
But
shut
then
the
the
door on people in
actual
public meetings.
Zoom
Yeah.
would be-
That makes sense.
Thank you, everybody. Phil, you were next up. You were very patient. The next topic of business is pumper, tanker,
Wait a minute.
bid result
Yeah.
and recommendations.
So I think everybody got a copy
Yeah.
of the recommendation,
Read it.
and after receiving 4 bids, going through the 4 bids, the 4 bids that were received, and I'll go from highest to lowest. Autotronics, 510, and I'm just gonna go without change. Allegiant, 474. Dingy, 416. Excuse me, let me back up because the trade-in is included in here. So Autotronics, 495. Allegiant, 469. Dingy, 416. DeSoucy, 379. With that, the recommendation that I put in front of you folks, added 3 options. One was a 2,100 gallon porta tank, with aluminum frame. The one that we have right now is an 1,800 with a steel frame. This would make it lighter, plus we'd be able to dump the truck completely one time at once. Second option is to continue the black over red paint theme that engine 1 had. This would just be the top half of the cab. It wouldn't be an extensive. And then the third option that I'd like to add in would be for 2 of the air pack mounting brackets to be installed by the manufacturer into the truck. So then if we are able to be, send 3 people, 1 can operate the truck, 2 can go to work. Simple as that. So with that number, with what was anticipated when we originally talked, was the 450 number. So we're in the 66,000 range less, which I'm very happy to be able to present that. And I guess I'd answer any other questions. Did meet in person with 3 of the 4 bidders. So they've had an opportunity, they all had the same opportunity, they all got the same information, and they all have looked at Engine 5. And Engine 5, as originally requested by the CIP, would be leaving in a short, I don't know exactly what period of time, but would be leaving.
Questions from the board?
The $900 painting option, is that very important, or is that a place where we can save money?
Certainly could take the 900 out. It was only added to continue the same scheme that had been started with Engine 1, the same theme, I guess, not scheme, theme. But we certainly, that's, the board's decision.
Yeah.
That's why they put in his option.
Other than visual, does the black do anything? Okay, no, I just didn't know if it
Doesn't have
changes
any,
your
doesn't
eyes
have
or,
any
it's not
function.
like paint during a
It's
game.
purely-
Okay.
Purely,
Yeah.
a choice that,
Good, okay.
It brings your truck, that's it.
yep, doesn't do a thing to operation of the truck whatsoever.
What will the current tanker be worth in 16 months?
My crystal ball.
Pennies?
My crystal ball is not.
Is it substantial or is it just pennies?
I hate to get any sort of a figure.
No, don't give a
because I'm generally wrong.
Probably equal or more than this engine, but I don't know.
It's gonna depend where the market is, number one, and it's gonna also depend where we can market it.
Yeah.
If we can get it west of the Mississippi, they still love standard shift vehicles west of the Mississippi. If we do a gov deals or, something that's more local, not sure.
So we added the old fire truck, the antique. Do you remember the antique one? I can't remember what it was. And there was a power wagon at one point. We had one that I think might have gone out for a bit to be a farm vehicle. And then there was one that was more of an antique. And I think it got some interest that you wouldn't necessarily know.
And
in
there are,
collector type groups.
there are some other brokers
don't
out
know.
there that in talking with some of the bidders that they use themselves. And I've gotten a couple names, so I mean, it's just another option other than putting it just out for bid.
I don't know. That's not a lot of money for paint.
No,
And
I don't think it's a lot, and I
If
think
it's
it adds a
gonna
lot
make-
of pride to the community. to see it.
exactly,
I think it's
if,
important.
if on the long term, we keep up that color scheme with the fire equipment.
Well, and I think back with Engine 1, and again, I wasn't here at the time, but I think it was kind of a consensus and the input that everybody wants their trucks looking different than the next communities, only because they want them to look different. And
We pay
that's-
money to paint all our police cars.
And I think that's
we're
where
consistent that way,
where the
too.
black over red started, and,
I think it's,
again, it doesn't have a function, it doesn't make it any less usable.
we were taking it out of the CIP, am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a savings to the CIP to not have to spend as much as we had originally discussed.
Yeah.
What's the pleasure of the board? I want to make a motion.
And so we make a motion.
You doing it?
I can. Do I have to read the whole page?
No, I
Good.
think you could read the bottom line now. Is that okay? Award the contract to,
The bottom line is Phil Neely.
well, no, I meant the bottom line number.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes, please.
It's a CIP question. what have we come up with, how we're gonna finance it and how we're going to pay it? Are we gonna have to pay upfront this year? or
I
not?
thought we said we were paying for it, through the CIP.
At delivery.
Pay it at,
When?
pay it at delivery.
At delivery, okay, no problem.
And they're at this point saying
I'll be gone by then.
April of 25.
But we had a small injection of cash by doing the trade for the existing, American La France now.
Right.
No injection of cash taken off.
Oh, it's taken off.
Taken off the
Okay,
top.
well, we
And that's
don't
how
have to keep maintaining it then.
But that, I just want to be clear on that. There's not any cash transferred here. This is like you trading your vehicle.
And deliveries in 25?
Would be they're giving an estimate of 16 months, which would bring it to April of 25 then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you ready to make the motion?
Sure. I move that we accept a total contract amount of $383,573 for the E1 pumper tanker with approximately 6-month delivery and specifications as shown on Chief Neely's sheet.
Do we have a second?
And authorize.
Yeah,
the
not
six-
16.
Oh, and
16 months.
I did say 16 months.
6.
And authorize the
Did I?
town manager
Excuse
and- or his designee to
Accept.
execute all documents.
And authorize the town manager or his designee to execute all necessary documents to complete the sale.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion from the board.
Thanks for getting the bids and bringing them forward.
Okay, questions or comments from the public? Steve?
Steve Patton. So what's the name of the company that got the contract?
For this contract is E1. E1 is the manufacturer. DeZorzi out of St. Johnsbury is the representative, Steve. And the chassis is a Freightliner.
Okay.
And
So this E1 company is not related to septic pumps, I hope.
No.
not, I
Good.
have no idea, but I don't know
Yeah.
that connection.
Send it back.
But they are the same company that we bought the last engine from as well, am I
And
correct?
one before that. This would make our engine pumper tankers E1 across the board, and part of why I'm very pleased that they were able to, be where they are and the pricing is. I think we hold some, service.
Yeah.
Right.
And can demand proper
Good move.
maintenance when needed.
Well, we've not had to demand. They've
But
always been there.
We can. That's important.
Question?
I just wasn't clear. Are you going with the fancy paint job or not?
The number that was
$900,
proposed is
yes.
based on paint.
I believe the number that was. approved-
I specified in my, motion that the specifications as Chief Neely recommended are.
Which
be
are-
part of it.
I mean, I wasn't clear, 'cause you read off
Yep.
3
Yep.
different
The
recommendations.
answer is
Right.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes.
There you go.
Other questions or comments? Dan?
One, I'm actually glad that DeSourcy came in the lowest. Because they also have a lot of local service that they can do. And most of the engine in the Upper Valley now are E1s.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Further questions or comments from the public here in front of us? Online? Seeing none, we have a motion on the table. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? It passes unanimously. Thank you for your time and for
Thank
spending
you.
so much time this evening with us. Okay, we're on to declaration of public works equipment as surplus.
So, Director Jim Taylor has put this forward that they have surplus 32-inch hydraulic grading bucket.
What is a grading bucket?
Not exactly sure, but I think it's a farther bucket.
It's
that they can
a
use.
flatter bucket. They're not as curved. And they're designed to, go right down on top of topsoil, for example.
Yeah.
So that you can spread it more evenly.
Well, okay.
So they're a little smaller actually than a standard digging bucket or other bucket. And Steve's here. So I'd love him to just stand up a minute, if you would please, Steve, and define exactly what a grading bucket is.
Well, a grading bucket has no teeth and it's usually wider, flatter, shorter in distance front to back than a digging bucket, and usually only used to make things smooth.
Okay.
My question is, what did it come off from? Big down, by the way.
It says a cat mount, so it must have come off of that.
Yeah.
I don't know any more about it than that.
I'll look at it.
Okay.
I don't know either. He
Yeah.
just.
Yeah,
he
he just says it has a cat mount, so it had to come
I
off.
think I have a visualization now.
Cat
A lot
If
of
you
those
machine.
smaller
Yeah.
machines.
If you watch the
have those.
guys when they're doing some of the work, it's kind of like, and they're
Exactly.
good at it. It's like watching the ballet with a bucket. They're very, very good at
Sean,
it.
my excavator with a flat bucket, that's a great.
Okay, see, that's what I'm thinking of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we asked you to be here, Steve. Thank you.
There we go. Thanks for hanging with us. All right, is there any further questions or comments on this item?
Just for clarification, we're not replacing this because we have other equipment that that serves the job in the occasional times that we need it.
No, they determined they don't need it
Yeah,
anymore.
right. He has a
I
machine with a similar bucket.
correct.
I would entertain a motion.
I move we declare as surplus a 32-inch hydraulic grading bucket with Caterpillar mount and authorize the Director of Public Works to list it for sale on an online auction site.
We have a second.
Second.
Is there any further discussion from the board? Any further discussion from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it passes unanimously. Thank you.
And we'll post the link as we normally do.
Yeah.
As it's.
That was good. All right, then we have Whitney Hall contract. So in your packet, you have Ed's.
Yeah, I have a write-up. I wrote you guys an email a few weeks ago saying that we talked with the library trustees and they had agreed to pay $164,050 out of their fundraising to cover an increased gap. When I started to sign that contract, I noticed that they had put an add-on option on the bottom to refurbish the elevator. I thought it was in the contract. So I've talked with them about that and looked over some things. If we do sign the contract as is, there's an overage of $132,000, which I'm confident that we could fund about $80,000 out of the town's owner's portion of the budget. Looking through that, which leaves approximately $52,000 that would need to be funded in some other way. I do feel that we can manage our way through that. Talking with Travis from Defiance Electric, we expect to get a New Hampshire Saves rebate of somewhere in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. Some of the lighting and those types of things will qualify for like on the bill financing if you go with the high quality, really efficient LED lighting. So I think there's some ways there. I also think we're gonna find some cost savings as we go through the project, but that's always kind of up in the air a little bit. And then we've also been talking that there's an approved project for some TIF funding for the parking lot, which we may be able to use a little bit of those funds to help offset in the future, but we can talk about those more as we move forward. So there's really two options here, or three options. I guess we could not sign the contract. But two options to sign the contract and move this project forward is either to sign it knowing that there's this little bit of overage and we're gonna figure out how to either manage our way through it or fund it in some other way. Or we can leave the elevator as an option. The one thing we may need to do, which I think the money will be there, is replace the equipment if we bring in three-phase power, which we're working on pretty hard. But then the other parts of the elevator, we could fund it if we had some extra money and manage through, or we could decide to do that at a later time.
So the refurbishing of the elevator, are any of these safety issues or is it more aesthetics?
No, Stanley Elevator has told us it's in really good condition. It's the wear parts are in really good condition, and that's part of the reason we redesigned the building to keep the stairwell and elevator, which really helped us on the budget part of things. But they did say that they could in a refurbishment, they could replace the motor, which even the new single phase motor would make it a little bit faster and better than it is now with newer technology. And then they also have kits you can buy to make the inside look new again.
So if we decided not to refurbish it now, is that something that can be done after construction is complete, let's say 2-3 years down the road?
It is, and one thing that we did talk about is anything that we run through Breadloaf to do, they have a 4% up fee for managing it and doing it. So even if during this project, we decided to bid out the refurbishment of it, that would be a 4% savings on a, right now, they put in about, I don't know if I had the number in here, but it was about $145,000 for the refurbishment of that. And, but that was just I'm gonna say a high price given to them by Stanley Elevator without coming out and looking through it and making a full RFP type determination. So we both, Breadloaf and myself, expect that number to come down because that's not too far off of putting a new elevator in. But I think they stayed high to protect themselves in giving us that estimate. So I'm fairly confident that we're at a place that we can move forward and make this happen, but wanted to bring it to the board and get your guys' input before getting authorization to sign any contract.
I told Ed, my feeling on the elevator is that the elevator was kind of a stepchild when it got put in. It wasn't done well. It destroyed some of the use of the upstairs of the building, and it's gotten neglected over the year. I'm not saying neglected as in being in bad condition, but if it's not well used and it's not well presented, we're doing this whole project, and I worry about leaving it off. I don't necessarily think we have to include it in the project and pay the 4%, but I guess my personal thing is I'd like to see a commitment to getting it done. I worry that it's gonna be our next roof overhang or our next lack of insulation, right?
Yeah, I guess so comment on that would be that one of the top 3 complaints we've heard about that building and the impact thing was that the elevator doesn't work well. It's too slow. That was just like a continuous thing. And that is something that we should definitely address. I do think it should be part of the building project in general, because this is sort of our, we want to do this once. We don't want, and then we want to maintain it. We don't want to have a series of, we'll just do that later. That's sort of a poor way to manage this project in my mind. So my question is, what's the worst case scenario if we go with if we sign it as part of it, we sign a contract of $132,000 more than the bond plus the library's money, and we don't get the rebates or whatever? What's sort of the worst case scenario?
I think overall worst case would be that we needed all of the owner's money. We have that $132,000 to pay. There's some things in the owner side. It was estimated and budgeted to buy new phones. We bought new phones last year. It's not part of the project. There was $120,000 put in for furniture, which we're gonna need some furniture, but I don't think we need $120,000.
I'd also like to point out, and I have pretty extensive experience with putting elevators in existing buildings, that their fee is actually 6.5% on the $132,000 allowance, which means that they're gonna make $8,000 and literally do nothing, because the general contractor does nothing with regard to an elevator refurbishment, zero. So I'm the first that's gonna suggest that we not spend $8,000 to have Breadloaf have the privilege of it within the contract, remove it from the contract. And I believe that within the next 12 months, once the project gets started, we can find not only a better price for refurbishing the elevator, but also find the funds to get it done within the construction timeline.
Where would the 100,000 eventually come from?
Well, as Ed has already pointed out, the first 12,000 is gonna come because we're not gonna buy phones. And that's already in the budget right now.
But that's part of the contract.
It can come from this budget. It's just not in their contract to build it.
Yeah, there are savings to be had within the owner's costs. And I believe also that closely managed, as has been pointed out, there are savings to be had that will come up with the money that we need to refurbish the elevator.
And I don't know how you get an elevator grant, but apparently it seems like something that's within.
It's not specifically for an elevator grant, but any grants which come along, for example, money which we can get in terms of electrical efficiency grants will go towards the project and therefore that's money that Bread Loaf will not be spending.
The 3-phase is a pretty big deal if we can get
The
that.
3-phase is a big deal, but we can always step it back down. If we put 3-phase into the building, we can still step it down to single phase for the elevator itself.
If you need to, but I think it'd be great to put in a 3-phase.
It would be, and if we're gonna go with 3-phase, there's an efficiency to be had in terms of electrical use to have a 3-phase elevator versus single phase. It'll use less electricity. But in the long run also, there are ways to refurbish the elevator even if it remains single phase.
And I do agree with Tracy, it can go either way. I mean, you can put it in the contract, you're gonna be paying about $8,000 to Bread Loaf to do it, but it's in the contract, it's done, that's maximum price. They take the risk from there. Or you can pull it out and within the budget that we're talking about, if we can fund it on the Bread Loaf side, we can definitely fund it ourselves on the other side.
So it's an excellent chore to make the responsibility of the clerk of the works as well.
Yeah.
You have a
So,
supervisor.
so again, so the worst case is we're stuck with, we pay, we don't have Bread Loaf do it. So we save that money, but we still have roughly ballpark $100,000 cost. That's not gonna come out of the bond, it's not gonna come out of the, it's not gonna come out of the library's funds. It would come out of the general fund, because that's where we pay for other things from. There's potential offsetting revenue, for lack of a better word, from various rebates and whatnot. But the worst case is you don't get any, and we're spending about $100,000 in general fund to do the elevator.
I mean, I think it's.
Is that a fair statement? Like, that's the worst case?
We're absolute worst case.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think worst case is,
Yeah, no, I wanna make sure we're very clear
I
on what
think
we're doing.
you've
and
stated
understand
pretty
it.
well.
I think,
And the best case is that we're able to manage the money in a way that that's not the case, but I wanna make sure we understand.
we're gonna end up somewhere in the middle in reality, you know,
Correct.
and we just
Yeah.
don't know which version we're gonna hit. But I guess my big thing is, I don't want us to spend all this money renovating the upstairs and then have an elevator that's
Yes.
like everyone already hated.
Yeah.
I guess that'd be like a slap to the face of all the people who voted yes and wanted a better space to say, oh, BTW, you're gonna climb the stair. Anybody who's climbed the stairs 600 times on election day knows how much fun that is too. So, and the elevator is slow, and when you're the one who's trying to help put people in and out of it is really interesting. So I would hate to see us spend all this money on this space, and then for me, is there any ADA money out there that could help?
We can definitely look at that.
Because to me, it's a whole ADA thing, like, just because you're disabled doesn't mean you should have the worst form of transportation to the top floor.
I think we're also likely to come up with electrical grants that are gonna give us a substantial amount of money that are not in this budget. And that money means that those are funds that we won't be paying to Bread Loaf. And therefore, that money is going to be available to do, for example, this elevator project.
Yeah, I think 50,000 is pretty conservative.
I think that's a modest estimate, to be honest.
So do we leave it outside of the contract, like as an option? So it's on there saying that we have intent without signing into the contract, or do we?
I think we leave it outside the contract to the extent that they are not responsible for bidding it and they aren't responsible for supervising it. But it's still within our work as far as the construction is concerned.
And we charge the town manager, their designee with.
We already have hired a clerk of the works.
Right, no, that's what I'm
who is,
saying, like,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure, very capable of supervising this
I'm pretty sure.
relatively minor refurbishment, actually.
Can we all fight over the color?
Stainless steel is only
I'm
one.
kidding. We're having trouble. So, okay, so we have a motion here that's proposed. We need a not to exceed amount, and
I came up with $5,663,000. And the way I came up with that, Ed, was looking on the right-hand column, yes, the 522, but the next number eliminated the 130,000 for the elevator, which made it 4,551,000. That also meant that the construction cost dropped because the 5% dropped $6,000. I kept the $336,000.
You're pulling the elevator out. It's this 5,966,200.
Yeah.
Well, it's the 130,000 that was included as their allowance.
No, because they pulled all the elevator stuff out.
And it's still in there. It still says elevator refurbishment and allowance is in the 4680.
Wait, hang on.
Where?
Right-hand column, second number down. $4,680,995 includes a $130,000 elevator refurbish allowance.
There's two different ones.
That's the one that's dated 12/28.
Yeah, 12/28's the one with it put back in. If you look at the other one that I. gave you,
Correct,
Oh, you're on the back.
correct.
So if you
It's the one
want,
with it put back in. Therefore, if you take it back out,
if you want to take it out, it's the 12/15 number at the bottom.
This one right here. I'll put the,
well, what you're taking out is their allowance that's in their budget.
No, it's taking it all out. So you want that bottom number.
You're not taking, which one is in there that you say you're taking out?
The 12/15 number has the elevator taken out of the budget completely. The 12/28 one has it. So you just need to pick the bottom number on the total project.
Well, you need to take out their allowance, the one that's in their budget, $130,000.
yeah, that's what he's saying.
It
The
already is
12/28
taken out
is
of the
in,
12/15.
and the 12/15 is out.
So that's the number you need at the bottom. You
Yeah,
need
they
to do
didn't-
Your own
The
calculation.
math there doesn't quite work because if you take the 130,000 out of the general construction, you don't get that same number.
I would use their number here, and short it, or we're gonna be in a bigger.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and this is no place to do the math, certainly. But the point is, yes, the elevator allowance comes out.
And it's maximum number, just so you know that doesn't mean that's what we're paying, that's the maximum amount.
Right.
If it goes over that budget, unless there's a major change order or something, Redlow eats the cost.
Yeah.
If it comes in.
And
under
their
that,
contingency is
we only
also
pay
based
what
on
we
that
pay.
as well.
It's a percentage. So, okay, so the,
Yeah, if we try to change numbers, it changes a lot.
No,
So I
that's
would just use that.
So they
bottom.
can recalculate the number and you can,
The 5,966,200 is what I would put.
so
in.
5,966,200. All right, does someone want to make a motion to that extent?
I'll, make a motion to authorize. How are we gonna mention the moving?
You don't have to.
We can sign, you can make a motion to sign a contract based on
Just
the
with the-
12/15
It'll be implied by the number that I chose.
2023.
Yeah, you can use his motion and just say
Okay.
based on the 12/15.
Okay,
With a total project budget cost of 5,966,200.
yeah. I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town manager to enter a contract with Breadloaf for an amount not to exceed
5,900.
5 million.
5 million.
$566,200 for the renovation and expansion of Whitney Hall, and hereby authorize the town manager as designees to take such actions and execute all documents that may be necessary.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Hi, is there any discussion further from the board or questions? Any questions or comments from the public? Yeah, Dan.
I heard a number of 164,000 from the library.
Yes.
Is that the total that's the library collected in donation?
No.
for?
No, that's what they decided to bring forward for this cause.
Towards the building.
Another big part, and Shirley can speak to this if they want, but they fundraised on the premise that they would lower the bond amount. So they didn't want to pay all their money for a little bit that's over.
Okay, so the remainder is gonna go against the bond?
And maybe some other stuff that they decide to purchase. I don't know if they need equipment and things in the library, so,
Whatever adheres to the promises
but
they
they're
made
gonna
their
spend it
donors.
on the project.
Okay. Then my other one is I'm glad you're putting the elevator in there because I'm sure if you don't refurbish, it's gonna come out of CIP. So,
You should laugh. Yes, this is a fair point. Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, it passes unanimously. Thank you, guys.
Maybe sign tomorrow.
All right, Whitney Hall stage curtains.
So we came to you a little while ago. I didn't look up the date that we came, but we were talking about the curtains on the stage, the regular curtains, not the grand drape, just the brown curtains that hang and it was decided at that time to kind of wait and see what we were doing with the stage and decide if we needed them or not. We are building a false wall there, keeping the proscenium. There will be no need for those stage curtains. I don't really think there's much value in them, and it's definitely not worth us trying to go about selling them and taking the time. So, the Shaker Bridge Theater had asked if we were gonna get rid of them, if they could have them. So I would ask the select board or recommend to the select board that we offer to the Shaker Bridge Theater to come take those if they would want.
Does the drape pull closed? I've never seen it close.
The curtains opening,
No,
close,
the curtain-
grand drape drop.
The grand drape would remain.
Yeah, we're not giving that away. We
Right,
don't exactly know how it's gonna work in the scenario there, but we're
Right.
keeping.
right. But it's better than looking at a blank white wall.
Yeah.
Okay. I move that we authorize town manager to dispose of the regular theater stage curtains by offering them to the Shaker Bridge Theater as a thank you to the many years that they operated in the Whitney Hall theater space.
We have a second.
A second.
Okay. Any discussion from the board?
I'll just make a comment that I did bring this to the Heritage Commission when it was first brought up and they didn't have any info.
Are they coming to get the curtains or do we take them down and hand them to them?
I'm gonna have them come get them if they want.
Great, good.
Yeah. Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, that's unanimous. Okay, 2023 encumbrance of $200,000 for public safety building loan payments.
So what had happened here, we were supposed to make a public safety loan payment in June. With some of the delays and things that happened, we didn't take our first draw on the loan until November. Talking with Mascoma Bank, because it was so late in the year, they didn't ask us for a payment and they pushed that to June of this next year. So I'd like to ask the select board to encumber $200,000 of that payment, and I'll work with the budget committee to determine what we're gonna do with that, whether we use that for this next year's and lower the tax rate, which would push some of the tax rate increase into next year, or if we use that money to pay the principal down, reducing interest for the long-term cost of the loan. But what I need from the select board is determination whether we want to encumber that money from this year to next year or not.
What are your thoughts?
Why wouldn't we?
If you don't, it falls into undesignated fund balance and it's just $200,000 to use for whatever you want. If we encumber this, then it's supposed to be used in next year for the loan payment of some type. And then if we don't use it next year, it would fall into fund balance anyway. So
And we have a healthy fund balance.
we do have a healthy fund balance.
And this money was raised with the intent to pay this bond, so we should.
Yeah.
Any
Okay,
questions?
so I would move, we encumber $200,000 from the 2023 debt service budget for a principal payment on the public safety building loan.
Second.
That says for a principal payment.
Principal,
Yeah, okay. I would just say for a payment. on
For a
the public
payment.
payment. I wrote the principal in there.
Yes,
are you
I'm fine with deleting principal from my.
second
motion.
renewed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion, questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, that's unanimous. Conservation Commission application from Jane Shop. So you have it in your packets?
Yeah.
I would entertain a motion.
I move that we, appoint Jean Hinshaw to committee board membership for the Conservation Commission.
Second.
The only thing you have to determine is the term. There are two vacant positions. One expires in 2025. One would expire in 2027 on May 1st.
27.
Yeah.
27.
20, look
Which
at
you
that.
prefer?
All right.
Okay.
There you go. 27 it is.
2027.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Thank
Okay,
you.
hey, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it's unanimous. Thank
We
you.
don't fool around when somebody volunteers.
We get really excited and then we assign you more job. So, okay, onward to New Hampshire VW grant authorization.
We already did those.
Did we?
Yeah, we did this at the last month's meeting
We just have to sign
for the,
We,
They didn't have to do an authorization?
we said we would take it if we, and we, didn't we?
I know it
give
was
back?
discussed, but I didn't know if they did the authorization, so.
I'm pretty sure there was some like long language about.
Well,
we had to decline the earlier grant in order
They
to
have
accept the
read
larger
it
grant.
or just-
And I thought that's what we
I
did.
don't know, I just.
Do you want us to just read it to?
I think we just need to sign this.
Just
Okay.
kind of thing.
So-
We'll
So we-
sign it.
Okay,
So
we'll
do we
sign it.
each individually sign it or just one?
Mhm.
Now I don't need some.
Actually, I think I just signed.
Okay.
All right, annual town
Well
report.
done.
I wanna not get into trying to figure this out tonight. I'd like everyone to think about an appropriate dedication for the town report and about a cover photo. So last year, our cover photo went to the folks at La Salette, and the dedication, I think we knew the most likely. So just thinking about it, sometimes it's individual, sometimes it's a couple, sometimes it's an organization. So if everyone would put on their thinking cap and email your ideas to you, okay. Oh, you. I was like, who's
I'll
it?
delegate.
By what
Okay.
date do we need a cover photo roughly?
Well, the report will be going to the printer probably just after the budget hearing, so before that.
So somewhere around the,
January.
And I think the cover photo,
February
often we propose an idea and
Okay.
Elisa gets so many for the calendar. I think
Mhm.
sometimes we've had that kind of fortune, sometimes somebody else has provided, so we don't usually have to go looking far.
I will also propose that we're gonna have a groundbreaking
that's what I was going to
Tuesday,
suggest.
and we could probably take some photos there.
That is,
Pretty big deal for the town.
yeah.
Good point.
That's exactly.
Approved.
I, that's why I asked the February 1, thinking we may have some ground broken by then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. that's
Do we get
for you guys
hard
to
hat?
decide. It's a 2023 report. It's a 2024, I think, but.
It's a 2022 budget.
If you have an idea, you can send it in.
I just wondered, do we know when we're gonna do groundbreaking? yet?
Yes,
Next
Yes.
Tuesday at 4 o'clock.
Next Tuesday?
Tuesday at
it was decided earlier in the meeting, so we'll be posting that and send out an email for.
Did you follow up on that email that I sent you with
Okay.
that list?
Want to go to acceptance of donations to community nursing program, trust fund, $500. Someone want to make that motion for me,
I
please?
so move.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, it's unanimous. We have, let's see, there's some administrative items that are gonna be coming around. We do, under other business, we have an add-in, we have one resignation. Sad face Emily Curtis, who does a lot for us, is offloading, Recreation Commission from her very full plate. I think you have to accept it, but I would suggest we,
With
accept it. with-
significant regret.
Yes.
There you go.
You do a lot for us and, probably deserve a couple minutes of your time back, right? We're appreciative. Will someone make the motion to accept the nomination? I mean, resignation with regret?
I move that we accept Emily's resignation with significant regret.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions? We even like nicely let you. Public comments for items not on the agenda. Anybody go ahead, Jeans?
Team Patton, so I'm just curious, I know this is not a budget meeting, I'm just wondering about like, what is the anticipated surplus for 2023? And what is the balance of the undesignated fund?
We are working on that. We
Okay.
did get your email.
Okay.
We haven't got the undesignated fund surplus for this year done because we haven't closed the books, but that will be completed soon in preparation for the
Okay.
January 18th budget meeting.
All right,
Each of those numbers.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments? Yep.
Just curious, any updates on the Johnson Drive property?
The attorney, I talked to him a couple weeks ago with some of the title research stuff, and he's supposed to be preparing his final determination, hopefully for, he said early January, but we're pushing it in January now. But we did, I mean, to their benefit, we did tell them to push it to the back burner with a lot of the legal stuff we had going on with them, with the purchase of the public safety building ground and all that stuff to make sure.
I was just curious. Be interesting to see what they say.
Any other public comments? Do we have items to sign you want to send around? Right? If there's no further public comments, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I said it. Have a nice night. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming.
Of course, that's her.